Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, ho! It's me, Mark. That was meant to be the Lumineers. I don't know if you got that one. It's me, Mark, head of guest relations for the Talking Joe Comics Podcast Casino. If you're new to the show, you can find out all of the details over at the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Today we will be looking at G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, issue 292, which was released 11th of May 2022. It's the second part of the arc where Roadblock smokes a bunch of dope before cooking up some choice beef. That's right, it's high stakes. Joining me, as always, it's a Real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
Hi, Tim. It's we were just talking earlier, and it's been best part of a month because we've been doing things with our lives. I've been on holiday. I've been talking to British people about Action Force. You've been having free comic book days, all sorts, and we're back to talk Joe once more. How was Free Comic Book Day, by the way, this year?
It was great. It is historically our busiest day of the year, and we had one last year, not 12 months ago, but on August 14th, because it was delayed because of the pandemic, and we got lucky. That managed to be the day that we reopened after our long closure for renovation, and that was a good day, but it was two things. It was Free Comic Book Day and our first day back, and also we had furiously unpacked that week. So it's sort of hard to compare this year's Free Comic Book Day with last year's. So not our biggest bang for a Free Comic Book Day this year, but that's fine with me because we didn't need the store to be packed the entire time because it's still a pandemic. And I guess there's no and also it's I should say
the sentence is allowed to finish.
No, there is an and. It's the end of the school year for me. Free Comic Book Day has always been a little extra hard because it's always right around that week that I'm doing a bunch of final projects and meetings at school. And many years, somehow we managed to have an event at the store 1 week earlier anyway. This has happened a bunch of times. And so having a Free Comic Book Day that didn't line up with one of my city's sort of local cultural events, or, the weather was good, but it wasn't perfect. So, maybe some people were going to come out. I know this sounds like I'm asking for fewer customers, and that might seem counterintuitive, but having every customer can be its own kind of stress. But Free Comic Book Day was great, and
you're the store owner from Black Books. If you've watched that, I think he gets infuriated when customers come in and start interfering with his shop.
My wife has shown me 2 episodes, and I know it's a favorite of hers. Part of also Free Comic Book Day, it is a kickoff to summer. So in a way that sort of the summer movie season doesn't have a kickoff anymore. When I was in high school, it was Twister or Jurassic Park. And then, 10 years ago, it was maybe a certain Marvel movie, but these big movies come out throughout the year anyway now. So for a comic book store, it can feel like the kickoff to summer. And that can be a double-edged sword for a store in a college town because some of your local population leaves. But at the same time, publishers sometimes roll out exciting events. Marvel and DC have historically had summer crossovers some year, and it's exciting to see. We get the Free Comic Book Day comics ahead of time. We don't get them the day before, but to sort of keep it special, we tape those boxes shut when we get them, once we've counted them to make sure that they arrived. And then we hide them because we are not allowed to display, give, or sell them before Free Comic Book Day, and there are repercussions if we do. Yeah. And so we check them in, we count them, we tape the boxes shut, and we put them in the back. And even if it's, a week or 2 or 3 ahead of time. I don't take them home ahead of time to read them. That actually doesn't feel exciting. I take them home the night before or the day of.
And what was the big book this year?
We always run out of the Marvel book and the DC book first. We didn't run out of the DC Dark Crisis sort of prologue, sort of preview. We didn't run out of that this year, but we're not, in terms of new comics, we're not a big DC store. And also, Marvel published 4 Free Comic Book Day comics this year, and DC published 3. There's an indie publisher, 10 Speed Press, although they're an imprint of a bigger publisher. And the first thing we ran out of was their excerpt of a new graphic novel called It Won't Always Be Like This. The author is Malaka Gharib, and she had a graphic novel come out 2 or 3 years ago called Their American Dream, My American Dream. And that was the first one we ran out of. And then after we'd run out of the Marvel Judgment Day, Avengers, X-Men, Eternals one, that's the one that I wished we'd had, 20 more of. Uh-huh. And to supplement, we had extras from last year's Free Comic Book Day for when we ran out, and also last year's Halloween comics giveaway that Marvel did, and the sort of version of Free Comic Book Day from Halloween 2 or 3 years ago.
And were there any G.I. Joe free comic books, just Tim Finn specials, just to get G.I. Joe comics in people's hands?
No, but the free books were right next to the new and very recent issues rack, and I made sure to rearrange those so that the last 3 issues of G.I. Joe plus the Yojo and Cobra specials and the 40th anniversary Silent Interlude special were all... G.I. Joe got a little bit more real estate on the new rack than it might, because I knew we'd have a lot of people coming in.
Do you still have a few copies of the 40th anniversary special? Because I know people have been struggling to get hold of that one, because I think a lot of places underordered.
Well, places are silly. Hub Comics knows G.I. Joe. Oh, yeah.
Other places are silly. Hub Comics isn't silly. Be like Hub Comics.
I'm going to work on that tagline. We should. I could talk about my shop or the end of the school year for a lot longer. We should talk about this comic book, this specific one.
Comic talk, oh, comic talk. Larry Hama writes them, Tim and Mark discuss them, whoa. Comic talk, oh, comic talk. Larry Hama writes them, Tim and Mark discuss them, whoa.
Okay, so we are talking about issue 292, released 11th of May, which at the time of recording was just a few days ago. The creative team, writer, as always, Larry Hama. Artist, as often, S.L. Gallant. Inks, as relatively new but have done a few, Maria Keane. Colours, as always, Jay Brown. Letters, as always, Neil Utake. Group editor, as mostly always, Tom Waltz. And research specialist as well, Diana Davis.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So we've got 3, which is a reassuring number. Cover A is a continuation of the joined up cover from Freddie Williams II, with colours by Fariza Kamaputra. Cover B is from S.L. Gallant, with Mindbender and Cobra Commander in the casino on the front. Colours by Jay Brown. And cover RI, retailer incentive cover, art by Jerry Kissel, colours by Cullen Davis. Duke whacking Cobra Commander in the kisser. What did you think of these ones, Tim?
So the Freddie Williams II one, I have spoken a lot about these, so I'll do the 1-sentence version. This is a good composition, considering that it has to be a composition for its own issue and also a much larger composition. I know I shouldn't do a double take on. Do you ever find yourself doing this? You see someone draw Storm Shadow and you think, quick kick. and I know that Quick Kick doesn't wear a shirt. Also, I know Quick Kick's dead, but the red sort of bandolier on this Storm Shadow, and we tend to see Storm Shadow with a mask, and some artists
he's not wearing his mask. It's quite unusual.
If Quick Kick is Bruce Lee, and you take Storm Shadow's mask off, and you give him a bigger mop of hair, right? And you draw him really small and far away. Like he starts to, as a character type, as a martial arts character type, look more like Bruce Lee. And so my brain says, oh, there's Quick Kick. Helix has not quite a full costume. She's wearing her sort of yellow, although there's a lot of green in this yellow. But there's no the sort of armor or the sort of waist stomach piece or like a breastplate or a chest piece. It just sort of looks like she's wearing, a shirt and pants, and then maybe she's got a hood or a scarf or something. But she's grabbing a sword, which is cool.
Yeah, Lifeline's got a pistol in this one.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on sort of where he's a pacifist and where he's not.
Before we get to cover B, so last episode I was building up to a sense of somewhat mock anger and frustration about these covers apparently trailing the return of Serpentor, which of course will never happen. But now,
well,
the story.
But that's this is a discussion for either the next episode, because Serpentor's not on this cover, or when we talk about the interior of this issue. But I know where you're going. Yes.
Okay. We'll maybe get that. We'll get to it next cover. But my sense of frustration that the cover is completely divorced from the interior is, I think, I'm going to have to eat my hat on that one. So we shall see. Okay. Cover B from Mr. Gallant.
Cover B we talked about a few months ago when it was the next month image, and we weren't sure if it was going to be that cover or not, and it ended up being 2 issues hence, and we weren't sure if that was a scheduling snafu or a change. I really like this cover, and at my store I have cover B in front of cover A because, sorry, I don't think cover A sells this comic well because most of these characters are not in the issue. But cover B very much represents what this issue is about, and is also funny, and is also highly unusual for not only an issue of G.I. Joe, but comic books in general, right? You tend not to have, like, remember all those issues of X-Men? Like early on in the Hickman run, or like in the mid-'80s when Magneto was sort of a good guy and was training the New Mutants. Remember all those covers of X-Men when Xavier and Magneto are in a golf cart, slowly wending their way through a casino, laughing and talking with each other while people are getting zapped or brainwashed in the back, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is a really, if you think of G.I. Joe covers, you might think of Mike Zeck covers where there's a lot of tension in the physical form of 2 people fighting or posing with weapons drawn, or like blasting, or an Andy Kubert cover of some people posing or some vehicles flying by, or a lot of Shannon Gallant covers in the IDW run where 1 or 2 or 3 Joes is posing with not much of a background, or like one color in the background, or what's the cover? It's sort of a red background. We're inside a helicopter. Who's been shot? Roadblock's been shot, and they're 5 Joes, 4 Joes trying to help him. Lady J's been shot.
Lady J's been shot, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Roadblock's like over the top.
Fact-checking Joe here. Tim is thinking of issue 198, which does have Roadblock on the cover with a gunshot wound. They must have been getting confused with issue 172, where Lady J is shot and Roadblock is standing over her. The situation reversed. 10 up.
There's no one description of a cover. You have 2 or 5 or 10 sort of general types for covers. The cover that this most reminds me of, and that's not even, and this is a long time ago in the IDW run, but the Shannon Gallant cover where Serana is beating Mindbender with a giant novelty molar in a dentist's office, although that cover doesn't have a background, because it's unusual and it's funny and maybe even absurd. And this is not absurd. This is just highly illustrative. Like what I'm saying is, to a lesser extent, we don't get as many story covers as we used to in comics, and that includes G.I. Joe. We get a lot of, people posing or Spider-Man swinging or Batman on a gargoyle. This is almost a scene just from the comic book. What also jumps out at me about this cover is there's a lot of great logo design and typography in it. The Cobra Casino logo is prominent. It looks great. The little cold slither, right? And there's a cute joke. Little cold slither font treatment on the slot machines looks great. What I'm assuming are actually LED screens that say "Play Virtual Texas Hold'em" on the Brainwave scanner. Like, that's really striking and good design work. And I'm going to guess it's Neil Uetake, but I don't know. And this is also a little unusual in that there are no Joes on it. There are only Cobra characters and civilians, right? It's like, when might that have happened? Like the Millville storyline. And then also, this is a personal thing that doesn't mean anything to anyone. But when I first saw this cover, because of the purple and the metal, the people who were getting brainwashed, I actually thought they were night creepers. My first impression of this cover was, hey, night creepers, because I identify G.I. Joe through color. So if I see purple, magenta, silver, gray, and lavender, I'm going to think night creepers. I love this cover.
Excellent. And a lot of very natural body language there from those civilians over on the right there, in a queue, waiting to get on the virtual Hold'em brainwave scanners. And, you're in a queue, you're waiting. What you do, you're on your phone. That's what they're doing. Great cover. And to your sort of point that you made earlier about kind of the cover A's being somewhat sort of generic looking in the last few issues. That really struck me as I was doing some prep for this episode, and I was kind of wanting to reference back to some earlier issues, and I was flicking back through the issues in my long box, and just looking at the covers, I had no idea what was happening in any given issue. I actually had a better clue as to what the contents of the issue were by looking at the artist's name in very small fonts. It's like, oh yeah, Billy Penn issue. Okay, that's the one where they were last on they were on Cobra Island and doing that mission and etc. So yeah, I unfortunately generally get the cover A on my standing order from my comic book shop, and unfortunately that tends to be the slightly more generic pin-up rather than the story-centric one. But
Cover RI, retailer incentive, is drawn by, as you said, Gary Cassell, or is it Jerry Cassell?
I think I said. Did I say Jerry Kissel?
No, I'm asking because I don't know, but it's Gerryyy. Excuse me, Gerrykissell. This artist has done some work for IDW before. Code Word Geronimo, A-Team, which was that tie into that movie, and does some book covers for the Shake Davis series of prose novels published by Warriors Publishing Group. So we haven't seen this artist on G.I. Joe before, and this is notable to me for two reasons. It's a little cartoony. It doesn't scream animation style like Sunbow, but it is drawn more in that direction and less in a more in an animated style and less in a American adventure comic book style. And particularly the four characters who are visible are so associated with the Sunbow series, and the covers of the Saturday Morning Adventures comic has been so much about the characters that from the cartoon, Duke, Flint, Destro, Baroness, etc., that for a second I thought that this was the wrong comic, that this was actually, in my pile at the store, that this was actually Saturday Morning Adventures 3's retailer incentive cover, because that came out the same day this week. The other thing that jumps out at me about this cover is that it is very much divided in half. that compositionally, Duke punching Cobra Commander is the bottom 45% of the cover. And then I don't know what vehicle this is, so in quotes I'm going to say Firebat or Skyhawk.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a discussion on that on the Facebook forum, and Magnus pointed towards a Dragonhawk. So in the toy line, a Dragonhawk VTOL was a Sigma 6 vehicle, and the Dragonhawk XH1 was a chopper, so somewhere in the middle of the two.
Okay. So the top 55% of this cover is Scarlet kicking Baroness, and a little out of focus or knocked back because the outlines are not black but gray is the background, and you realize we're on the deck of the Flag. And then two other things jump out at me about this cover, sort of on looking at it a little bit longer. One, I'm pretty sure that this vehicle, not the Flag, maybe the Flag, I'm pretty sure that this vehicle is a 3D model because its shadows and its perspective are so precise, and the Gatling guns on the front, like that shading looks like, Google SketchUp, not the way that someone would draw. And then I realized that Scarlet is in front of the logo in a way that almost never happens with G.I. Joe comics at IDW, and did happen more often at Marvel. IDW, whether by choice or by accident, appears to have been very hesitant these last 12 years in putting things much in front of the logos. And maybe it doesn't matter because it's the retailer incentive cover. There aren't very many of them. They're tending not to be put out for sale to sell the comic, but as like rarer things. The cover is also quite dark. Duke really pops, but there is a lot of K, a lot of black ink printed into the background and this vehicle. And then I wonder who's piloting the vehicle. Do you know from toy research or from that Facebook discussion?
No, they didn't talk about it. I'm just zooming in on electronic version because I've got the black and white art.
What's the vehicle called again?
It looks a little bit, I think it's an slightly imaginary vehicle.
By the way, I'm fine with an artist making up particularly a Cobra vehicle. I'm totally fine with that on a cover. This would not be a case where I'd say, this should have been the Firebat. You got it wrong. It's like, no. There were so many weird sort of half and half vehicles in the movie tie-in lines and some of the exclusive lines in the last 10 years. And that's the kind of thing you'd see in the cartoon anyway, where in one scene in one episode, someone would just make up a vehicle that doesn't quite match an actual vehicle. And that reads as fun rather than as a mistake.
Fair enough. Yep. We'll I think go with Wild Weasel as a placeholder for who that is anyway. So yeah, let's move on to the plot breakdown. In the aftermath of their last mission, the Joes are on the Tomahawk in the Transcarpathian Mountains, transporting their prisoner, Wotan. Dawn tells Scarlet about the memory leakages from the original Snake Eyes, including his feelings for Scarlet. She speculates that the brainwave scanner might be able to rectify the situation. Wotan interrupts, revealing he has 2 kilos of Semtex plastic explosives implanted in his back, which would be activated by a false tooth. His tooth is yanked out, but in the confusion he grabs a grenade, but is pushed out of the helicopter by Throwdown. Scarlet grabs Sean, saving him from the same fate that befell the original Snake Eyes. That is falling with a grenade and getting blown up. On Cobra Island, the Cobra Casino is just weeks from opening, but Dr. Mindbender is concentrating on his personal project. For Project 1, he wants Laura to capture Snake Eyes again, and so that he can be replicated as an entire corps of cloned Cobra ninja assassins. For Project 2, his glowing green DNA gestation tank is to be used to create a new and improved Serpentor. Mindbender has concluded that the original Serpentor had the wrong combination of ancient tactical geniuses. He has already travelled to the Gobi Desert to find the remains of Genghis Khan and will combine his DNA with that of Sun Tzu, Shaka Zulu, and Marshal Zurkov to create the new and improved Serpentor on steroids. Revanche sleeper agent Mei Ling is listening in and reporting back to Alpha 001, who decides to rethink strategy in light of plans for this new Serpentor. And finally, in the High Sierras, Wade Collins is at Snake Eye's cabin in the woods and receives a letter from his son Sean, telling him about his friends at the Chaplain Assistant's motor pool, which makes him think that he needs to go pay him a visit.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
When I read this, it seemed very short and breezy, but when I came to write the plot breakdown, it seemed very long. What were your high-level thoughts on this one, Tim?
One of these, not quite a transition issue, because there is an action scene at the beginning. What struck me about this issue was that it has many callbacks, and some comics series do a lot of that. You know, like every time the Joker shows up in a Batman comic, someone, sometimes the Joker, refers to like a crowbar or like missing a sidekick or like harming Batgirl. And G.I. Joe sometimes does that and a lot of times doesn't. But with Scarlet having Snake Eyes throwdown, fix his masks with a letter to someone who's not quite a Joe, but kind of a Joe. Mm-hmm. Also, that refers to a letter from Snake Eyes, both physically an object, a letter that Snake Eyes wrote, and also an issue. And all this talk about Serpentor. And even, hey, Laura, you have to get Snake Eyes again, right? Which was only 20 issues ago, which doesn't seem like a long time ago, but I guess at this point it was. And then the bit about... not repeating how Snake Eyes died, falling with a grenade.
Yeah. And in the original issue that Snake Eyes did fall and die was also featured Serpentor's return as well.
And then lastly, I wrote this sort of the largest in my notes. I feel like this is the first issue where Larry Hama knows the series is ending, in referencing the letter from Snake Eyes in issue 155. So I don't know the timeline of when this issue was written, or when IDW told Hama the news, or when Hama absorbed from the internet the rumor that the license wasn't continuing past December 22 at IDW. But and certainly Hama was going to bring something back for issue 300. But this now feels like lining things up because the series is ending. And how did the series end last time? With a letter from Snake Eyes. And so this has an additional resonance to it, which I like. Whereas when we talked about this an issue ago and maybe 2 issues ago, bringing back Serpentor, I wasn't convinced that was a good idea or an interesting idea. And, ideas aren't interesting or uninteresting. It's the execution, right? So it's like, no, make a new character or like clone someone else, right? It's like, but Mindbender has enough of an explanation that I feel like it's earned. That, okay, Hama's laid track for himself that this could be interesting and fun and worthy of what cynically you might call a retread, and not cynically you might call a variation on a theme. Yeah,
and another callback, I guess, is Mindbender going and sort of collecting DNA, which we saw previously in issue 49. I initially felt, reading this on my first read through, I thought it feels definitely like a middle issue. It's much less of a one and done versus a lot of the issues that we have been seeing recently. And the phrase that came to mind, which is probably unfair, on a more detailed reading, but afraid was sort of slightly treading water, because some of the elements that we're seeing aren't necessarily completely new as well, in the way that the payoff at the very end of the last issue, where she's sort of telling Scarlet that she's got a problem, that kind of that doesn't get followed up directly. It's sort of a slight aside, almost, sort of. It's not segueing directly. She sort of follows it up on the plane, almost as if that original conversation hadn't quite happened. And similarly, Dr. Mindbender's plan to capture Snake Eyes and all of his other shenanigans has been, it sort of seems to have had a few runs at it. So we've had very similar scenes 3 times now. We had the Billy Penn issue in 287, where he's in the casino with Laura, and he sort of starts alluding to his schemes. And then again, we had Laura and Mindbender, where he's sort of filling out a little bit more detail of those schemes. And in this issue, it's even more detail of those schemes. And it kind of a parallel in my mind, which is niche, is the Adam Buxton podcast, where annually he catches up with his former comic partner and director, Joe Cornish. And over the last few years, they have a Christmas special, and Joe Cornish reveals a little bit more of a specific anecdote where he met Tom Cruise, and they call it the Doodle story, where he just fills him in on a little bit more detail of exactly what happened in that story each time, and it's just sort of been drawn out for somewhat of this hilarious effect, where you get the story and just a tiny bit more detail, and you have to wait one more year to hear the rest of it. Tangent, but we're kind of seeing a little bit more of Mindbender's schemes each time we have these scenes of him and Laura. And last issue, even, he had that moment where he said that he needed Snake Eyes to die, and then they fill that out in a bit more detail again this time. So last issue, Mindbender said that they had to kill Snake Eyes, and she kind of pulled a face, kind of indicating that she wasn't completely happy with that. And again here, she says, is it necessary to kill the original Snake Eyes for this plan to work? That's the whole point. It tips the whole balance of power. And he asks, would it be a problem? She says, no, not a problem at all. It doesn't matter at all that instead of leaving me for dead in that corridor, he carried me to safety and left me where our medics could find me. What did you say? I didn't catch that. Oh, I was just nattering inconsequentialities. So we get a bit more of that filled in. Sorry, Tim, I feel like I've been monologuing.
No, that's okay. I was about to. I had a DC Comics comparison that was probably going to take me a good monologue to explain. I agree with you that Mindbender and Laura having this discussion on a couple of levels repeats things that we have seen. And I think a little of that is writing for a monthly comic book instead of writing for a graphic novel. Mm-hmm. And this comic book has always been written for the monthly comic book. You know, at the beginning of every scene, all the Joes say everyone else's name out loud. Mark. And the thing that sticks out at me, so the path is clear to replicate the most formidable G.I. Joe Commando Ninja into an entire corps of Cobra Ninja assassins. So immediately I thought, that reminds me of the Cobra Ninja Viper, that mail-away action figure from the late 80s, which is the recolor of the original
like a
Storm Shadow, but in
figure.
Yes. And because before the Night Creepers, there was, if you followed, there was no story sort of, for those Ninja Vipers, but Cobra would have a bunch of ninjas, not just one ninja. And here, Cobra would have a bunch of ninjas. I trust Hama, if this happens before issue 300, to make it interesting. I would be sad if it sort of happens and 6 of them come out of a clone tank in 299, and then there's a truncated fight in 300, and it feels like there was no time. So I think I sort of hope it doesn't happen. Or maybe just one evil Snake Eyes pops out of the tank before someone breaks the tank. Speaking of truncation, this is sort of an unfair and lazy swipe, and I apologize to our most sensitive fans who this might offend, but I can imagine Snake Eyes versus Evil Snake Eyes on the cover of an issue of Devil's Due in 2004. And it being really cool, but also silly and sort of not earned. And the DC Comics analogy that I'm going to make is, since we were talking about Free Comic Book Day, the big event about to happen in DC is a miniseries called Dark Crisis. And it's trying to top sort of all the other big events like this. Final Crisis, maybe Infinite Crisis, I'm not sure. Dark Knight's Death Metal, I'm going out of order. And the original Infinite on Crisis Earths.
Crisis on Infinite.
Crisis on Infinite Earth, thank you. So my problem is that, so Grant Morrison introduced the Multiversity several years ago, this cool, weird miniseries. And the idea was there are 52 different Earths. And each one most of them are ones that we've seen in like an Elseworld special, or this variation of a character in one sort of, quote, what if story. Well, we can put them on that Earth. So if we want to go there and have more adventures, we can actually go and they have a place, as opposed to some miniseries or special that was just a one-off in publishing. And there's a scene at the beginning of Dark Knight's Death Metal where someone's holding a map or describing the multiverse, the multiversity. And they're either holding a piece of paper or they're describing it. And they say, imagine 52 Earths on this map. And then they flip it over and the back is black. And they say, this is the dark multiverse. And I thought, no, that doesn't make sense to me. That would just be a 53rd Earth. Or let's go back a step. The multiverse isn't 52 circles on a piece of paper. It's a floating cube. That's a three-dimensional map. And the Earths aren't circles, they're spheres. And they spread out from the middle, from Earth 0 or Prime or Earth E, whatever our Earth is, or whatever the main DC Earth is. Or you draw 52 circles on top of each other and they're all vibrating at a different frequency and they, take up the same position in space, but in different dimensions. Whatever it is, that sort of two-dimensional expansion of that concept, like, didn't follow the expansive logic of that concept for me. It's like, wait, are there 52 evil Earths now, or is there one? Like, it just seems silly to me. And I'm coming back to G.I. Joe, I promise. So in Dark Crisis, I've read Justice League 75, where they die, which sets up the Free Comic Book Day comic, which sets up the road to Dark Crisis, which sets up Dark Crisis #1. And in it, some villains are able to attack the heroes because, quote, the dark, which is, I think, some evil or a power from the beginning of time, or the original crisis is coming, or something. And it doesn't actually seem either like linearly an escalation of previous crisis stories, or more than linearly, like parabolically more of a crisis. It seems like all the nouns have just been swapped around in the sentence and it's just the next one. And I don't feel that the stakes are higher. They're just telling me the stakes are higher. And so let me get back to G.I. Joe. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are the best ninja on Earth. They're the best fighters, and they're already on a team that has the best of the best, right? And so when Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow fight Red Ninjas, I feel like they should be like second best or third best or 10th best, right? Or if they're 20 Red Ninjas, 10th through 21st best. And we tend to see all these stories where, the Red Ninjas are taken out pretty quickly. And so if you now have this story where we might get an army, quote unquote, of Snake Eyes clones, I feel like that scene where they fight Snake Eyes, or they fight Snake Eyes and all the Joe ninjas, Throwdown and Dawn and Helix, like, that would need to be a triple-sized issue, because what you're now saying to me is that the best fighter on Earth is fighting himself in multiples. This term isn't quite right for it, but it's like the stakes creep, like the next DC event for this summer, I'm being told it's a bigger deal, but I don't feel that it's a bigger deal. I feel like it's kind of just the same thing again. It's like, no, but this time the entire Justice League died. It's like, well, I wasn't like, they all just sort of disappeared at the end of issue 75 of Justice League, and like they'll be back in the middle of the story or at the end of the story. So I'm worried that if there's a scene upcoming where Snake Eyes or other Joes fight a bunch of evil Snake Eyeses, that it'll remember the Scorpion, all the ninjas on top of each other.
I try not to, but yeah, every so often it does come back.
It was issue 127 in the Andrew Wildman run at Marvel, and then it makes the cover. So Firefly has been revealed as a ninja, and he's like the Stinger on top of like, that was a little silly and very, very cool when I read it at the time. But I think some readers probably just found it silly. And, you know, some of that hinges on the artist pulling it off, the amount of space they're given, the actual fight choreography that's being written, and the dialogue. And as soon as I saw this panel of like an entire corps of Cobra Ninja assassins, I wasn't thinking like, oh, they're going to infiltrate the pit and like it'll be a high stakes, haha, that's the name of the story, battle with the Joes, like, you know, issue 50 in reverse. I thought, is this going to be like a Scorpion of Ninjas in like a, you know, like a 6-page scene in like one room at Revanche, or in Mindbender's lab at the casino on the island? So it could be fanish and not work. It could be authentic and well done. It could sort of not happen because there's not enough time. It could turn out really cool and really well. It could turn out okay and sort of a mixed bag. But I'm a little concerned about the idea from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my very long take on this one word balloon of dialogue in this scene.
I had something that sort of slightly niggled me about this one as well, which was that Dr. Mindbender's plan is to capture Snake Eyes and clone him and kill him. So why does it matter to him if he has the data on Snake Eyes from the original brainwave scanner, if he's just going to capture him again? Because surely he can re-extract memories if that's what he needs. He doesn't know that the original Snake Eyes is dead. So it seems that it only matters that he has the original memories because the original Snake Eyes is dead. And that means that there's then a route to bringing the original Snake Eyes back, maybe as a clone, maybe something else with his own memories, if that makes sense. It
Yes,
shouldn't matter to Mindbender. Yeah. It only matters because of knowledge that the reader has that he doesn't have.
Yes, thank you. This was a thought that was mostly formed in my mind when I read this scene. And it was like, wait, Mindbender doesn't really need the body, does he? I think he needs the body because if they can get, whether it's Throwdown or Dawn or a person, that creates drama for Laura when she can confront, let's say, Throwdown again. And that is a scene I look forward to reading, but Mindbender seems to be acting a little out of story logic here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think possibly you could no prize it. My half-hearted attempt would be that the original brainwave scanner with the memories of Snake Eyes is somehow superior still to Dr. Mindbender's efforts to recreate that same sort of functionality. So the kind of the level of lifelike memory that is stored from brainwave scanner number 1 is better than what he would be able to extract on his newer brainwave scanner. So that's why it is useful to have those backups.
My no prize was that the trauma of unleashing evil Snake Eyes clones on the Joes would be increased if it happened while Snake Eyes was captive. That if the Joes are just having lunch and evil Snake Eyes show up, there's sort of hope. Like, well, Snake Eyes, Throwdown and Snake Eyes are here. Let's all stop them. But the scene I'm imagining is something more like the Joes are in this lab. Snake Eyes is tied up like he is on the cover of Yearbook 3. and evil Snake Eyes are popping out of a tank. And so the Joes don't have. I keep saying Snake Eyes like it's actually him, and I think half the time right now I mean Throwdown, and half the time I mean Dawn. But they don't have the help of that character, and also it's upsetting to see their teammate in jail.
Yeah.
In a
And I guess there's potential that they could create these clone Snake Eyes in advance, of having the original Snake Eyes captured or killed, that they don't have to necessarily be completely connected. He doesn't, because he's got the original memories, that he could potentially try and create clones in advance of getting him. Yeah.
I also wonder, so Mindbender has 3 plans, and the third one, heavens no, this is another project altogether. I am guessing that when Hama wrote this, Hama didn't know what it would be. Because Hama, as his other Facebook page tells us, has been making it up as he goes along for his entire life, for his entire professional career of writing comics. And I'm fine with that. And it might come to nothing might, whether there was an issue 301 or not, nothing might come of that. Or, the Joes crash this party in the next 7 issues, take care of projects 1 and 2. And then, several years down the line, someone says, like, oh, Mindbender, I've got this plan. It's this project from a long time ago. And the asterisk would say, see issue 292.
See, I read that line slightly differently, where he's, heavens no, this is another project altogether. Heavens no, this is another project altogether. He sort of then segues into talking about correcting his mistake with Serpentor. So I read that as being unconnected to Snake Eyes, but moving into the Serpentor plan with his new Serpentor DNA. So he's creating a new Serpentor with some new DNA in the mix, which includes a couple of names. Shaka Zulu. He was the founder of the Zulu Kingdom from 1816 to 1828. He was one of the most influential monarchs for the Zulu, responsible for reorganizing the military into a formidable force via a series of wide-reaching and influential reforms. We've also got Marshal Georgy Konstantinovich Zhukov, 1896 to 1974. He was a Soviet general and marshal of the Soviet Union. During World War II, Zhukov oversaw some of the Red Army's most decisive victories, including the Battle of Berlin, which resulted in the defeat of Nazi Germany and the end of the war in Europe, as well as the real Genghis Khan, which we'll get onto in a bit, I think.
Maybe we can get onto it now, because so when I read this scene, so in this flashback
with rounded corners,
Mindbender,
let's not forget.
Oh yeah, I was very excited. I was very excited by those rounded corners. Mindbender says, from this I can extract the DNA of Genghis Khan. And this scene appears to be about either the real burial place of Genghis Khan or another burial place of Genghis Khan. And when I read this, I thought, wait, I thought Genghis Khan was in the original Snake Eyes.
Serpentor.
And I thought, excuse me, I thought, wait, wasn't Genghis Khan in the original Crisis on Infinite Earths? I'm pretty sure that Genghis Khan is in Serpentor in the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
And in Arise, Serpentor Arise, Part 3 and Part 4, Duke is heading to the burial site of Genghis Khan to head off Cobra, right? Because what we get in sort of half of an issue in 49, we get in much of the 5-parter Arise, Serpentor Arise, which kicks off season 2 in September of 1986. And then I thought, well, surely if it's in the animated series, it's definitely mentioned in the toy file card. And the toy file card mentions Napoleon, Caesar, Hannibal, Attila the Hun, and that's it. And then I thought, okay, before we record this episode, Mark is definitely going to have checked issue 49.
Mm-hmm.
So is Genghis Khan already in Mindbender? Excuse me. Is Genghis Khan in Final Crisis?
So issue 49 is quite a dense issue. They sort of open up with Destro and Mindbender robbing an Egyptian tomb, and in the helicopter that they go into. As they escape from the tomb, they are asked, "Did you run into trouble down there?" And Destro replies, "Nowhere near the trouble we had in finding and stealing the great Khan's bones from the Uzbekistani desert." And indeed, later on, they're looking at one of the tanks in the laboratory, and there is one labelled Genghis Khan. So the idea would be that definitely back in 49, Genghis Khan was part of the original Serpentor mix. I think what they are alluding to in the script here is essentially they're saying that the Genghis Khan that they used for Serpentor number 1 was not the real Genghis Khan, that they found him in Mongolia. So they say it was very convenient for the tomb to be in Mongolia, but they think that he must have died somewhere else. That died during his last campaign to subdue the Western Zia. And so they're sort of suggesting that actually it's the Gobi Desert is the genuine, real place of the actual Genghis Khan, and that they've only been able to actually find the location from the shifting sands that have uncovered the rubble. The oddity for me, though, is that they suggest that the tomb in Mongolia was covered by riverbeds for hundreds of years, and that made DNA recovery impossible because it looked like they were kind of using his DNA in that original mix, although I guess it was just a bare Skellington. So maybe they stuck the Skellington in there, but it didn't have any DNA on it.
Was Jack Skellington in Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Whereas this new Genghis Khan, it does look a little bit Skellington-fied, but they're able to find a hair which would contain the DNA for Genghis Khan. So, they say the dry desert air and the composition of the soil naturally mummified the remains so that they're able to extract DNA. So long story short, they thought they had Genghis Khan for Serpentor back in 49, but they were misinformed, and it's actually this new discovery that they've made that they're going to put into the brand new Serpentor on steroids mix.
So I was thinking about this sort of historical revision in the story of G.I. Joe, and I wonder if somewhere along the way, Hama, who reads newspapers and books, saw that archaeologists or historians have adjusted since 1986 where they thought Genghis Khan's final remains laid. And then in writing this issue, Hama thought, I could incorporate that additional historical accuracy into this story. Or just if he just did his own research and thought, I want to do the Genghis Khan thing again, because maybe it was a little bit vague originally. I sort of wonder, in writing an issue like this, I don't think Hama's going back and reading all of issue 49, but maybe. And I think he's relying on editorial and to some extent his own memory, and also if I get something slightly wrong, I can prize it away, because this all has to be flexible. This does feel like Hama the researcher, or Hama the well-read person who is including information because it adds authenticity. Like a couple issues ago when the Joes shoot that drone from the back of a vamp, and I thought, is this a made-up thing? It's no, that's not a made-up thing. Hama is paying attention to the news and military changes in the last couple years, and the story called for a drone, and it's fun to have the vamp, so the vamp launches a drone, because that's kind of the vehicle that would do it nowadays, or one of them.
I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. There is a page called The Tomb of Genghis Khan, which has all sorts of speculation about where he could actually be. It's unknown and an area of much speculation and research. The site remains undiscovered, though it is strongly implicated the most likely location is somewhere in the vicinity of the Mongol sacred mountain of Burkhan Khaldun in the Khenti mountain range. But according to the tradition of the Yuan dynasty, the part of the Mongol Empire that ruled over China, all of the great Khans of Mongols are buried in the area around Genghis Khan's tomb. The site's name in Chinese was Qinian Valley. The concrete location of the valley is never mentioned. So all sorts of rabbit hole of historical research you could go on to to read to bring it to life.
Yeah.
There we go. So that is what's happening over on Cobra Island. Should we shift scene to a helicopter somewhere near Transcarpathia?
Yeah. What a good scene.
I guess it starts off with the whole Dawn sort of opening up and talking about these memories and feelings that she's been having. So yeah, we sort of speculated on that ourselves about is there any sort of confusion there? And it seems that they're a little bit powerful, disturbing memories, and also feelings for Scarlett as well. I'll skip ahead to maybe one of my favourite lines of dialogue actually, which is what's he called? Mongoose. Mongoose says, "I'm not privy to most of what has been discussed here, but this is making me feel awkward as hell."
Yeah, that was one of that tied for favorite line. I was heartened that we've come back emotionally to this subplot that Dawn is having a hard time, that she's talking about it in front of other people, and now she's talking about it in front of Throwdown.
Mm-hmm.
And later in the issue, she says, or in this issue, maybe a good place for them would be in Sean. And I nodded when I read that, but then I also thought, well, it's still two people's memories in one person. That's still hard.
And a thought that struck me is like you've got these memories that maybe don't belong in your head, so maybe you want them taken out. But why bring Sean into it? Maybe he doesn't want old Snake Eyes' memories bunged in his old noggin as well.
Yeah, I think with Sean writing a letter to his dad, there's another attempt made at positioning Sean as the next Snake Eyes, as sort of family that he could be. I mean, and he says Scarlett is like an alternate mom, and I don't think that's enough groundwork for Sean taking the original Snake Eyes' memories back and becoming Snake Eyes, re-becoming Snake Eyes, the new Snake Eyes. But I think if you're freaking out in a helicopter, you might say that, and then maybe later on everyone says, "Oh no, that's not the best idea."
It's not the best idea.
I think the expected or fanish decision would be to clone a body and put the memories into them, and then say that that's Snake Eyes, and Snake Eyes is back from the dead. And maybe that Snake Eyes then immediately gets killed, and it's hard for us all over again. I don't think Larry Hama would do either of those, because I take him at his word when he has said in the letters page 2 or 3 times since Snake Eyes died, Snake Eyes is not coming back. I don't think he's being cheeky. I think he's dancing around this because it's an interesting topic. And, if this is too wacky and it's like, wait, this is resurrection and brainwaves. It's like, no, we've had this since Dr. Venom in issue, 17 or 15. And
he's said things in the letter pages that wouldn't ever happen, which have as well. So
yes. What I think was more likely to happen is by issue 300, the memories get taken out of Dawn and put into a computer, and the computer's turned off or somehow released, and Granny Demon says something meaningful, and they're sitting at a photo or a shrine, and they talk about sort of finally laying to rest Snake Eyes, that he's at peace because he's not, quote, haunting Dawn.
this is a thought that sort of just occurs to me as well, that we've got this end of the era at 300, at the end of the IDW era with issue 300, but then there's always potential for whoever picks up the license to want to keep on going with this same continuity, and not have new continuity, but not have the baggage of everything IDW along with it. So trying to take the best of both worlds. And they could well want to have the original Snake Eyes. So there might be something in there in terms of that we end up with a Snake Eyes, or the mechanism to have a Snake Eyes to be created as part of this end of 300.
Or maybe it's Sean, it's Throwdown. At the end of issue 300, we know it's Sean, it's Throwdown, but he's got Snake Eyes' memories, and then starting in a new issue number 1, no one ever calls him Sean or Throwdown again. So you and I know that it still fits, but new people wouldn't be thrown off.
Exactly. Any number of permutations of that same thing.
One of my overall thoughts about reading the IDW comics is, how is Hama a different writer in the 2000 teens and 2020s than he was in the 80s and 90s? And our co-host, Jay Cordray, for our Devil's Due episodes, has commented a few times, and I've commented a few times, that when a few Joes have cried in the Devil's Due comics, we don't think that it is in character. And I don't remember how many times someone cried in the Marvel run, but I noticed that in this issue, Dawn's tearing up when she talks about how confusing it is to have these memories in her head. And then Scarlet says, I'm sorry, I'm finding this pretty upsetting as well. And I'm trying to remember, is anyone... Wade Collins is tearing up when he's reading the letter at the end. Yeah, third to last panel. And I think back to... what was the issue? Was it 2 months before Snake Hunt? It was the wordless issue that was the memorial of all the fallen characters. Someone wrote about that issue later in the letters page, and Hama indirectly referred to how difficult that issue was to write. He said something like, you're staring at a blank page, and the memories come back, and the tears start flowing. And I think in a good way, this issue authentically deals with some emotions without sidestepping them in the favor of, more whiz-bang action figures, vehicles, action, and plot. And I find that really gratifying. And I have found in the latter half of my life, when I'm at like a wedding, it's not just funerals. When I'm at a wedding, is that my second cousin's daughter's bat mitzvah a couple years ago, and we weren't very close, but it was a beautiful affair. And I'm not religious, but some family was there, and I thought it was very moving, and I teared up, even though I'm not sort of sad for her that she's becoming a grown-up. And so I like the incidences in this issue of characters tearing up and Scarlet saying, I'm sorry, I'm finding this pretty upsetting as well.
I was almost that scene in the helicopter. I was almost tempted to stick it in error detected, but it's not an error, out and out error. It's just a slight oddity, which is just Dawn talking so openly in front of Wotan about the behind the scenes story of her memories and Sean as well, where she says, if anyone should be the repository of those memories, it should be Sean. If only we could capture Dr. Mindbender's brainwave scanner, we might be able to rectify the situation. That is, if that Sean wants to take on the burden. That's all, Snake Eyes' identity is meant to be hush-hush, top secret. They've gone to elaborate plans to kind of make sure that Cobra doesn't know that Snake Eyes is dead and that Sean is the new Snake Eyes. So it seemed a bit strange to be talking quite so openly in front of Wotan, and hit for him potentially to get that knowledge, although that problem is very quickly taken off the board.
Right. I thought this too. I thought, wait, this is very personal to be talking about in front of a prisoner. And I thought two things. One, not that the Joes would do this, but are the Joes just going to put a bullet in this guy's head by the end of the issue? They know it doesn't matter what they say in front of him. And then, yes, story-wise, it gets taken care of. But I'm going to no prize this away as helicopters are really loud and the doors open. And even though physically, if, Mongoose and Stalker can hear it, so could Wotan. But I'm going to no prize this away as they're rotor blades and he can't really hear.
Yeah,
He's got a mask over his ears, sort of, as his bank robber mask.
And it's slightly exacerbated by the dialogue. So Dawn and Scarlet are sat next to each other, and Mongoose is opposite them on the other side, further away than Wotan is. So if Mongoose could hear it, you'd think that Wotan could also hear it. But Wotan says, "Ha ha ha ha! All of your concerns and worries are moot." And I thought initially that might mean them worrying about personal issues and working them through and being upset. But it could quite easily just be Stalker's previous bit of dialogue, which is, what's wrong with the prisoner? Is he choking? Worrying that he's choking. That is moot. But either way, it's still a bit strange. But Wotan, I think, must be the most completely inept suicide bomber that I've ever encountered in the pages of a comic book. He seems to have it all in the palm of his hand.
Literally, he's got a grenade literally in the palm of his hand,
and he just throws it away.
I think he is thrown away.
He is thrown away. He's just got a little bit overexcited and starts telling everyone his plans that he could destroy them all rather than just destroying them all.
This was a funny parallel because he's being so expositional, and Mindbender before and after this scene is being so expositional. Well, Laura, let me tell you about all of my plans.
He was like, look, I've got Semtex in my back, and look, I've got a tooth with a detonator. Of course, they grab it open. But I love that. They sort of redeem it because I love the sequence where then Mongoose just grabs him. Stalker, pull that tooth. Which one? And this is my favorite line of dialogue. Take them all out. Hold him steady. And then that's that delicious moment. He's bit down on his actually before that, Stalker just yanking out the teeth. Nope, not the right one. Keep at it. Keep at it. And keep at it. He just bit me clear to the bone. He's been chomped down on. Got it.
I sort of imagined Hama smiling to himself with that Stalker line about, take them all out, not that one, because it's it's mean, it's painful, it's funny. This is a bad guy. This is a comic that sort of straddles the PG-13 line, and we want to see bad guys punished. And Hama might be making it up as he goes along, but I imagine when he introduced this subplot, he thought at the beginning, like, Wotan's either going to survive this story or he's not. Like that even if he didn't make the decision, he thought about the possibility. So you want to shift to the High Sierras?
Yeah.
And Fort Wadsworth? Yeah,
do you want to take I mean, we discussed it a little bit already, but so yes, obvious parallels to 155 and this little picture of Sean in the chaplain's motor pool and the bond that he's having with his comrades there. I don't know if I've got masses to add, but I'll ask a question which maybe you can try and address in your additional thoughts, which was, what's the element, do you think, that makes Wade decide that he needs to go and see Sean?
What are the crisis on Infinite Sean's?
Infinite Timbers. Is it Timber 3 or 4?
I mean, artificially, I think it's the imminent 300. But in story, Wade has always come back around. I don't know. This might sort of seem rote by this point, but maybe Hama doesn't know, and it could go in one of several directions. There's going to be some action thing, like Wade shows up, talks to his son, and then there's an exciting fight. And, Wade's been a fighter. And so we see, this, I know the ages don't quite make sense, but we see these sort of two generations of characters fighting some bad guys. Here's my story logic for it. Dawn is having a crisis. And even if Sean, his letter seems fine, and he's not having a crisis. But he's having a crisis because he's injured. Which Snake Eyes is Snake Eyes. So I take this as his dad reads this letter and interprets it as this letter is a little bit of a cry for help, even because the letter says everything's fine.
Yeah. He's further than that. He says, so you see, everything turned out for the best.
Yeah. I mean, he was terribly injured in space. I think this is not a story reason. This is an exterior reason. This is a Larry Hama writing reason. I think Hama might have realized that Sean needs some attention because just when he was about to become more of a character, Dawn showed up. And, it's like, how many Robins are there? How many Batgirls are there? It's like, well, for these 5 years, this is Robin and this is Batgirl, and this other former Batgirl is going to have a different name. But now we're going to do a team-up book, and it's called Batgirls. And it's these two Batgirls, and also the former Batgirl is the coach, right? It's like on the radio. I think it was time for Sean to have something significant to do or to happen to him.
We've gone through everything on my list of talking points. So apart from this in capital letters, no letters page again.
Yeah, my guess is once again that the book's got some scheduling challenges. The letters page is always the last thing to do. It's kind of a pain, and it's easy to drop it. And at this point, even though the readers may want it, the letters page doesn't make them any money. And maybe if they run one more ad, they make some money. Get someone else to buy Animated Adventures, because that seems to be the ad that keeps replacing the letters page.
The same one.
Yes, the same one.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's a key part of the value proposition. I've said this before of buying a monthly. If you wait for the trade, it can be cheaper. You often get all of the covers in the back, and it's a satisfying read to have it all in one go. If you're getting it monthly, you're getting the story, but you're also getting a few extras that you don't typically get in the trade. And the main thing is that you get that one extra page, which is the letters column. And when you're getting it, I think we're missing out on something from the monthly.
I will admit, I have never enjoyed the IDW letters pages as much as I enjoy the Marvel pages, because the Marvel pages, the font is smaller and a little more compressed, and I feel like we always got 2 or 3 or 4 letters, and in the IDW letters page, there's always a long introduction and 1 or 2 letters, and sometimes a little negative space at the end where there's just some weight of the page. But that said, Tom Waltz, this is about to end. We need this interaction. I need to hear from Hama, even if he's just saying, thanks, keep reading. Even if it's your gentle, sort of post Stan Lee, Carnival Barker, like, wasn't that a great issue, everyone? Thanks to Lethal Larry and Shannon Gallant and, fantastic Jay Brown, and get ready for part 3 next month. It's like, I don't need that part, but that's part of it. I really need this right now because this thing's wrapping up and I'm sad. I do, in case any of the fine folks at IDW are listening to this, I do want to offer, maybe no one has written letters in the last 2 months.
I know one person has.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's much less likely, but maybe it's not all on the overworked editors. But I would say, even if there are no letters, I could just use 3 paragraphs of padding from Tom Waltz, and then like 1 more panel from this issue reproduced in black and white, and then a little blurb about next month that isn't very specific. Like, even if we're not going to have dinner, offer me an appetizer.
Leave me a little mint on the pillow.
Tell me there's going to be a mint on the pillow, even if there's no.
But we do get next month cover, the Freddie Williams cover. Next month we get Serpentor on the cover, and we speculated again last time. Why do we think that Freddie Williams's 5-part cover got bumped? Because this was originally solicited, and I think it's now much clearer that this is this cover is kind of a reveal of the return of Serpentor, and now it's not just this crazy not just a fancy, nice looking joined up set of covers. It's actually having a link into what's happening in the story in some way now. So yeah, interesting that that's actually happening, that these covers are, with the delay, they're tied up with what's happening in the story. So I wonder, could possibly at one point it have been the idea that this Serpentor story might have happened earlier, or could it have been that maybe they saw these covers and thought, is there some way of tying the story to the covers, or it was just completely coincidental? I wonder how that interconnectivity worked.
Yeah. Who's the old man who brings the food?
So yeah, we're getting into I Spy territory now.
Oh, before we do that, let me just do 3 quick nods to Shannon Gallant and Maria Keene. You already referred to great body language on the cover. That follows through with Mindbender's pose in the golf cart on pages 1 and 2. The way that he's got his foot up, and Shannon Gallant. All these vehicles are hard to draw. A curved golf cart like that, very hard to draw. That's with no payoff, right? Like, that's not a difficult to draw G.I. Joe vehicle that people will say is cool. That's an ugly vehicle. You draw it well, and it's an ugly vehicle. Great bit of storytelling on page 17, where in the second panel where we're getting this letter, and this might be in the script, but we see Sean writing in the foreground, Stalker and Scarlet in the middle ground, and there's a window in the wall, and through the window we see Mongoose and Dawn starting the repairs of the vamp that we carries out in the next page. And this is a small thing, and it's not genius. It's just a small, great thing that anytime you have a wall, you can put photos or art on the wall, you can put a window on the wall, and you can show something happening. So just as a way to bring those 2 characters back into the scene a little sooner, that's great. And then there's great body language on the next page when Stalker comes in. You have this gag of the motor oil and the hood of the vamp slamming down.
And actually on the next page, you got some nice body language, of them hanging out in Stalker's office, and Mongoose is sucking on his thumb, his poor thumb. He's bitten, and then having the hood of a car slamming down on it as well.
But in that panel where they're all hanging out in the office, Sean is reserved. His body language is the most reserved. Yeah.
Sorry, and on that same panel there, not only do we have the cover, the wall covered up, using up that space with a couple of pictures of Biden and Harris,
Vice President and the President.
President and the
Vice President and the President.
We've also got a bonsai tree in there as well, which possibly is a little nod to Diana Davis's day job, and was well of those little the Easter eggs, the covering up the wall with some interesting things, the body language. We're also looking at this panel through a window, which is I think a nice touch, because if you're in a small space, just the layout of where you put the camera, so you can see all of these people in one frame without it looking busy or unnatural or whatever. If you have got a window on the wall and you're back from the window, it's a way of seeing in almost from an outsider's perspective, and being able to see, I guess, almost the four walls of the space of the people not being crammed in. And
it is the window that I mentioned from 2 pages ago. Yeah, it's sort of an anti-Edward Hopper painting, because everyone's looking at everyone else, but someone's looking out a window. I wanted to nod to a small art thing that I wish had a little more oomph in those 3 sequential panels, with the gag of the motor oil and the hood slamming down. Stalker's mustache is sort of drawn and sort of not, and I think this is one of those issues where in inking, there are thin lines and medium lines and thick lines, and when you're far away from a character, you might drop out some detail. And to me, we're not far enough away from Stalker that we drop out the detail of his mustache. I really need to see his mustache, and it's sort of visible, but it also sort of just becomes part of his upper lip. Tiny nitpick.
Yeah. Mongoose's mustache also drops out a little bit in those panels too.
Yeah. And then
Wotan's moustache grows in this issue. Last issue, it seemed to be a bit of a toothbrush Hitler-esque, thin moustache, and this issue it's much wider.
I wonder if someone said, "Hey, that looks a little too much like Hitler. Let's make that a little bigger."
Possibly, could be.
And then here's a Maria Keane thing that I like. In this panel, we've been talking about where we're looking in through the window. Above Dawn's head, and just to the right of her knee, and just to the left of Sean's elbow, there's some. It's not zipatone, because I think at this point it's digital. This is in Photoshop, but there's some zipatone. There's a mechanical tone where you can, back then it was a sticker, like an adhesive. If you've seen in comic books where there are dots in an even pattern or lines, sometimes they're diagonal lines, sometimes they're thin lines that get thicker. If you think back to the 20s in Marvel Transformers, I think Ian Akin and Brian Garvey added a metallic sheen to a lot of Autobots and Decepticons' legs and arms with this kind of thin to thick line zipatone. But just as a shadow, it's not quite a knockout, but as a shadow knockout, Maria Keane's applying some mechanical tone here, and it also shows up on page 1, 2, 3,
on the
5.
Interior of the
page 5
helicopter.
Yes, the interior of the helicopter above Dawn's head and around Sean's head, and more everyone who draws comics, more mechanical tones, please. Always welcome.
Very good. Yeah. It was on my list of I Spies as well.
I spy with my little eye.
So let's get more into the I Spies. So you mentioned cold slither on the slot machines on the front cover for cover B. Did you also notice that there's a tease that Cold Slither would be playing at the Cobra Casino on page 1?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was reading page 1 so quickly. I thought, welcome, grand opening, Cobra Casino, RESTA something. And then I just kept going. Yes, that's a good one. My I Spy was going to be the vice presidential and presidential photographs in the office. But here's a fun one. On page 16, when Wade gets a letter from his son, his cast shadow covers the address so that Hama need not figure out the actual mailing address of Snake Eyes' cabin in the High Sierra Mountains. But there is a return address, which has been drawn in by hand by Gallant and Maria Keane. This is not a lettering bit of type. And the address is 210 New York Avenue, Staten Island, New York, 10305. And that is an address for the Gateway National Recreation Area on Staten Island as part of the National Park Service.
Real life Fort Wadsworth location.
And then sort of related, this one I don't have a satisfying look at me, I know how to Google bit at the end. But on the next page, this panel we keep referring to where they're all in the office together, we're looking through the window. There is a mug on the table. And oh no, sorry, going back to Sean's holding a mug, but sorry, 2 pages earlier when he starts his letter, there's a mug on a table with a pair of scissors, 2 pencils, and a ruler in it, and it has what looks like a seal for Fort Wadsworth with 2, rifles in a circle. And I looked for a Fort Wadsworth seal or logo, and I couldn't find it. It did not look very hard. This may be an army seal that I'm not searching for in the right way. This may be a little thing that Gallant sort of dashed off. This may be a very specific reference that Hama sent his artist and, was pretty small. But I appreciated that. And I wonder if we'll, see it at a convention in a year for sale as a thing that someone made, if it is invented.
It's a bit scant on the details. I don't think we see quite enough of it to get a satisfying recreation.
Ten Huts. Fact-checking Joe here to let you know that artist Shannon Gallant has confirmed that this logo originated in a panel of G.I. Joe issue number 3. It is of crossed rifles encircled by swords, and Shannon has attempted to include this several times before, including on water towers. Now drop and give me 50.
Yeah, just you talked about the delivery of that letter to Snake Eyes, and it was delivered by his letter and his food was delivered by Gramps, who runs the local store in the High Sierras. And funnily enough, I was just reading the issue where he possibly first appeared. I'm not entirely sure, but he was definitely seen back in issue 192. When the original Snake Eyes and Scarlet were driving up to the cabin.
That's great. When I saw this, I thought, is this the Viper? The window wiper from the Viper is coming? It's like, no. He shows up as a Devil's Due Easter egg because, is this Willie Lumpkin? Like, no. The mustache is wrong. He doesn't have glasses.
I think we touched on this, that there's this Cobra Casino logo, which has this sort of delightful element of the casino chips sort of running as the lines on the logo, which looks great and is apparently all SL Gallant originated. Dr. Mindbender's got this beautiful Cobra buggy, the golf cart you talked about as he's driving around the casino.
It's not beautiful. It's
ugly. It's ugly in a beautiful way. And on the back, there is a bumper sticker that says, "How's my driving?" Continuing on from the sort of shenanigans that we've seen the BATs getting up to in the background as they've been in the kitchen frying up various things there. They're continuing to work away in the background here, doing various things, getting the casino ready, sort of carrying carpets and laying down material on the various gaming tables. The one that struck me was that we're seeing meat being put into cold storage by the bats wearing white butcher's coats.
Everyone, there was a Dr. Venom action figure in the 25th anniversary line? I think he was a convention exclusive, and he has a white coat. Or is it not going to work with the white sleeves? But we can all make this version of a bat with a white coat.
If any of the listeners, if you can make a version of the bat in a white butcher's coat, possibly, ideally carrying some meat. Please do share it and let us know, and we'll put it up on these socials.
We've had bats, battle android troopers. We've had BAATs, right? Astronaut android troopers.
I'll go with that.
Am I making that up? And this is the bat, the butcher battle android trooper.
BBAT, butcher battle android trooper.
And when you take off its hand, instead of applying a claw, it is just a very, very sharp kitchen knife.
Okay, next up, we're on bats. So Mei Ling is the Revanche casino worker bat. We saw Betty previously in 289. So they're continuing on with the Revanche casino worker bats. They've not forgotten about that. And that's me done. That's all of my I Spice.
Embedded in the Mindbender riding the golf cart at the beginning is Mindbender enjoying a beverage in either a real pineapple, because this is an island off the coast of Florida and Puerto Rico, right? Or and it's got an umbrella and a straw, or it's one of those ceramic novelty oversized mugs that's shaped like a pineapple.
Thank you. Yes, we definitely needed to draw attention to that as well. So good one. So as we know, there's G.I. Joe issues are perfect and we can never find anything wrong. Or can we?
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
So my first error detected comes on page 18. In this 3-panel, this is a technical thing. In this 3-panel sequence of the oil getting spilled and the hood slamming down, the hood slams down on Mongoose's hand, but it's covered by a narration box, so you can't see it, and so the joke isn't visible. And I understand from context what's happening. And, he is sucking on his thumb on the next page. And I think the bandage is from Wotan biting him. But this is one of those cases where, between writing and penciling and lettering, a different amount of information and arrangement of elements, it's like, well, if you move this word balloon over, you're going to cover up someone's head. You can't do that. It's already a little bit of it's not a breaking a rule, but it's already a little bit of a thing done less often, where some of these narration boxes cover the gutter and bridge the gap between one panel and another. So I was sad that I didn't get to see that thing landing on his hand, because that's a little payoff for the scene. And then but I'm going to forgive letter Anil Yotake, because there are so many great sound effects and treatments of sound effects in recent issues. Even this issue, the explosion that takes out Wotan, Whomp, WHOMP. There's a great curvature to it. The O gets bigger, so it's sort of medium, then big, then medium again. So it somewhat maps to the sort of rounded nature of the explosion. And then number 2, doesn't Wade Collins have red hair?
I would have said no. I would have said that he's blonde, like a dirty blonde.
But when Mark Bright was drawing all the... Am I just misremembering this? The clones remind... the CGs without masks in the Mark Bright run have red hair. And by red, I mean it's colored orange.
Huh.
So I know that back in the Vietnam flashbacks, he's probably always wearing a hat or something like that, or a bandana. And I understand here that it's graying, right? The sides of his hair are sort of gray, but I'm seeing sort of a light brown.
See, your classic Fred from the Wiggum era is
blonde. Yes,
blonde.
Right, you are.
So,
yeah.
I maybe Return of Cobra Commander era. Bright is leaning slightly closer to orange, but no. I think the model is blonde with old age darkening to brown, and grey is fine.
Sorry, by bright you mean colorist Bob Shea during the Bright era.
Yes, of course.
I'm gonna. There's a precedent for this with Hawk going from blonde to brown to blonde, or brown again. So close enough, right? The scenes clearly identify who this is, so I wasn't confused. But it is always exciting to see blonde characters in comics, because I got blonde hair.
Very good. I had a super pedantic, other than the points that we've talked about a little bit before about kind of maybe sort of more storytelling oddities, which are less errors and just as issues with the story. I had a couple of super nitpicky nitpicks on the SitRep page. We've got Dr.
The typo.
Yeah, 2 typos. Dr. Mindbender concocts a nefarious new plan. And once again, we have special thanks to Hasbro's Ed Lane, Taylor Rio, and Michael Kelly for their invaluable assistance.
I feel like this is... I say this with sympathy. I feel like this is of a piece with no letters page.
Of a piece.
Get the issue out the door.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. I feel bad even pointing it out, because it's these things are easy to happen in a rush.
As as a teacher who grades papers, I don't feel bad pointing it out. Because I remember when I was young, at a certain point in 2005 or 2015, I think my dad said to me, and then a couple years later, my mother-in-law said to me the same thing, referring to WashingtonPost.com and NewYorkTimes.com, like a couple of typos, sort of recently, not like huge errors, like a name is confusing because it's spelled wrong, but but spelling errors. And the implication was this used to sort of never happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my dad always said, when I turned in a paper, and he sometimes read them first, he said to me, the goal is no typos. Not you're allowed 1 or 2, no typos. And it might make me seem like a jerk to my students, and they don't follow this rule, but that's my goal.
Yeah.
But if IDW editorial is listening, I know it's not a choice we get to vote on, but if this is a thing about there's only 24 hours in the day, I would take a bunch of typos if we could, in the sit rep, if we could get a letters page.
Yeah, for sure.
And not that someone would tell me that the trade-off was successful, but if someone did, I would then not mention it in the podcast. I would not say there were 6 typos in the sit rep. I would just say, what a great letters page.
And I think normally I don't pay a huge amount of time to a lot of the wording in the sit reps. I wouldn't necessarily have noticed that one if I wasn't specifically doing such a deep dive for the podcast. And the second one with the special thanks, I probably wouldn't have noticed that had you not pointed out the same mistake last episode. But there you go.
Part of why I read that special thanks line is that, once or twice in very small text on a thing, I have gotten a special thanks. Not in this G.I. Joe comic, but in other things. And I don't read every name in movie credits, but I stay for the credits. Mm-hmm. And I'm always sort of curious in the different licensed comics, like who are the people at Nickelodeon getting thanked in IDW's Ninja Turtles comic? And it's probably the same people getting thanked in Transformers comics as in G.I. Joe comics, but maybe not. I find that a little interesting. So my eye does go down there. Uh-huh. It's not because I'm a jerk and I'm looking for typos.
We were talking before the show about Doctor Strange and the Multiversity of Madness and the Infinite Crisis of Doctor Strange's, and on that there was an awful lot of special thanks, which are normally back to creators who've done something in the storyline which has influenced the script or created a character which has been used in the film. It was a very long list, and for the brief duration it was on the screen, I wasn't able to fully digest all of the names. That's complete random aside, but it was fresh in my mind. I think I saw Brian Michael Bendis up there, but not too many others that stuck in my brain.
Similarly, it went by too fast for me to catch many of them. As a fan, I like seeing those names. As a person who buys comics to support creators, I'm a little sad because those people are getting no money or very little money. So come on, Marvel Studios, cut some checks.
Yeah, and then there's a bit of detective work at the end of it by various articles sort of trying to figure out why they were thanked, and often the creators aren't entirely sure themselves. Like, I'm not entirely sure what I did to get the thanks, and then they can't try and work it out. I go, oh right, it's that thing.
Yeah, didn't the original Judge Dredd film have a very clear grid of characters and writer and artist?
Oh really?
Creators?
Okay, I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the end of that movie in a long time, but I recall that there are 5 or 6, some of the judges and one of the villains.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, that's good.
I don't know if those people got any money. Maybe they just got sort of a more distinct credit, but hey, Marvel Studios, cut some checks.
We normally have Hammer Time and colloquialisms, but I didn't have anything this week, unless you wanted to.
I can imagine in the multiverse on Earth 16 of you and I doing this podcast, you would have called out the piezoelectric detonator that Wotan mentions.
Oh.
And in Googling piezo or piezoelectric, you would say like, oh, this is like electronics that work from pressure, which is sort of what he's explaining anyway, that when he bites down on his teeth, that the detonator goes off. So not a Hamaism specifically, but one of these techno
Yeah.
things that I can imagine as co-host of this show, you spending a moment on. And then we get to see it, actually, which is the payoff, right? That he refers to it. He's pointing to his mouth, opening his mouth. And then on the next page, there's a down shot of Mongoose Stalker having pulled out a tooth. And we get to see this whole molar with this little bit of electronic thing in the crown.
Yes, that does sound like the kind of thing that I would talk about.
Quote of the week, quote of the week, quote of the week, quote of the week,
Quote of the week, quote of the week.
quote of the week.
I referred to one of my favourite... Oh, actually, I referred to both of my favourite line of dialogues. Mongoose talking about feeling awkward, and then Stalker going and taking out all of the teeth. Was there anything else that struck you from the dialogue?
Yeah. On the page where Wotan refers to the bomb, or the detonator, and Mongoose says, "Stalker, pull that tooth!" There's all this yelling and rocking around in the back of the helicopter. And in the final panel, this is a slight up angle, right? The cameras, they're Lift Ticket and Wild Bill are seated. So the camera's at like 3 feet, right? Looking it's up just a few degrees. And this is such a small moment, and it doesn't feel like a Larry Hama moment. I really like it. Wild Bill is turning his head back, and he's got his hand sort of to his ear receiver, and he's yelling, "What's going on back there?" It's too loud. You're rocking the boat.
Yeah. Well, you kids be quiet at the back of the bus.
I don't think Hama wrote it to be funny, but I found it funny because it's so realistic, and it's a funny beat to end on. So that was my favorite line.
There was also some lovely Dr. Mindbender moments as always as well. There was let me see if I can spot it. He's talking about his schemes while he's sipping from a pineapple, and Laura's asking questions like those machines you have set up in your lab. He says, "Exactly, my little CG." It's just some lovely dialogue and little turns of phrase.
I enjoyed Mindbender's costuming for the Tomb Raider sequence, the tomb raiding sequence, where he has a white button-up shirt tucked in with a light gray sports blazer, a belt, and light gray slacks. I don't know that we've seen Mindbender in civilian clothes before. And I can imagine either Hama pointed out that he should wear this, or Hama didn't refer to it, and Gallant thought, I don't think he'd be in costume here.
Yeah, well, he's with the military from Chinese military, whatever, whichever military.
And he's in a desert.
He's in a desert, and
he's in a desert, and he might want to wear linens.
Okay, so I think for this issue, we are just left with some Yo Joage scoring.
Yo, cola, not grape soda.
It's Yo Joage time.
Well, I'll go first. Why not? So on first reading, I felt like I was probably going to score it relatively low, sort of towards a 6 or something like that, because it felt like maybe the story didn't move quite far along as I'd like. But digging into it, I think I got more of an appreciation for it. And yeah, overall, I did enjoy it. And the story is going in all kinds of slightly crazy directions, but I'm all for it. I'm properly jumping in with both feet. Serpentor's coming back. That's fine. Clone army of Snake Eyes maybe. Great. Let's go for it. See what happens. Anything else? Why not? Let's go wild and crazy as we sort of count down to 300. So I think I'll land on about a 7 for this overall.
In terms of a comic that I would give to someone to read, 6, because it's a transition issue. But in terms of for all the content and the forwarding of threads, so my actual vote is 7.
Very good.
Question: what did we ask this week? Let's find out as we speak.
So this episode I did get round to doing listener questions. So my listener question was, and this was very forward thinking, this was prior to reading this issue, it looks like Mindbender might be up to shenanigans with his DNA regeneration tube and brainwave scanners. If he were to bring back a G.I. Joe character back to life, who would you like it to be and why? So Jay Cordray answered with, this is our Devil's Due co-host, Jay. There is only one acceptable answer. Snake Eyes, because it's Snake Eyes. Or maybe Quinn. Kenny Krager, Snake Eyes, no doubt. They will be bringing back the original for the end of the series. Peter Seddon, I don't know who this loser is, 100% on Snake Eyes, pretty sure that because he died off panel, we never saw a body. In comics, that means that he's still alive and you don't even need to worry about cloning. Yeah, imagine that they clone him, and they've got a Snake Eyes, and then actually the original Snake Eyes wasn't dead and he turns up as well, and then we've got like 4 Snake Eyes running about. Adam Riches of comic and toy art fame says, sneak peek, 3rd time's the charm, and it'll be 4th time, including Devil's Due. See, because I've got my own theory that I've mentioned before on that I think it would actually work if he came back because he died off panel. If he dies off panel, it's not real, and he could just have pretended to die so that he could be a deep undercover agent living out his life in Dark Clonia with his true love. Gary Viola's gone niche. Captain Min and Tyrone, who died back in the old freighter. Chris McLeod, Full Force Chris, Diagnostic 80, Raptor. Again, one of the victims of the freighter. Stephen Miller, Breaker or Quick Kick or Trent. We had another vote for Breaker from Bleak5170, who's my favourite of the Bleaks. He said 100% Breaker. He was my second favourite Joe of all time. I loved how he and Clutch always appeared together, and you don't have too many friendships like that in the comic. Who else did we have? We had Ed Mundy. Billy is one of the few characters whose memories Mindbender has on file, and he was the first casualty of Revanche, so maybe fitting to bring him back as a Father's Day gift for the boss to finish off the Blue Ninjas. And we had Carol, aka Richard Straw, with Fred 7. The best Cobra Commander, controversial. Issue 300 must end with the scanner being utterly destroyed and everyone's memory of it being wiped. It's the only way that it can end. Either that or the scanner will destroy the world. And so those were mostly via Facebook. Head on over to the Talking Joe Facebook group to join in the discussions when they happen. But we did also have a couple of voice notes using the new voice note facility. So if you do want to leave us a message, you can head on over to talkingjoe.co.uk. There is a link there at the bottom of the Contact Us section to the link for leaving a voice memo. And you could leave us one like Chris Hagen did. Now, he caveated that he left this message and said Sparks many times, but actually meant shooter. So when he says Sparks, as he does many times, then just imagine that he is actually saying shooter.
So, Dr. Mindbender is up to shenanigans, and I'd like to see Sparks come back to life. And I have no idea why Dr. Mindbender would bring Sparks back to life. But I think Sparks should see the ripple effects of her sacrifice and how her one action at the very beginning allowed an ever-expanding G.I. Joe universe to grow and all that came from that. So bring back Sparks so that Sparks can see, the effects of her sacrifice.
So that's alluding to Shooter, one of the original Joes who died in G.I. Joe Classified. An interesting selection there. So next up, we have Skinny, who left us this message.
This is Skinny. Most people would probably want Serpentor, Doc, Quick Kick, Breaker, one of the mainstream characters resurrected, but what I was thinking was Mangler. You could have Dr. Mindbender go back to the site and collect his DNA for regeneration purposes. Then you could have a storyline where Mangler didn't die instantly, that he was left to lay there and suffer. And during that time, he built up a hatred for the G.I. Joes, kind of like a Wade Collins type of arc. And then one of the themes that Larry usually had was revenge is not the best option. So you could import that into the series as well, like a little mini-series.
There we go. Evil Frankenstein. Mangler. Any thoughts, reactions to that list, or ideas of your own of who you'd like to kind of randomly appear back as one of Mindbender's minions?
Well, Shooter is interesting because it's from the one Devil's Due story that Hama wrote that Hama counts in his continuity. If I'm remembering that correctly. Did he write two?
There's some of the Devil's, some of the Storm Shadow.
Frontline. One of three. Mission That Never Was, Frontline 1 through 4, Declassified 1 through 3, and then which makes me think of that first arc of G.I. Joe Origins at IDW, where Hama had sort of the villain before Cobra Commander, and I don't remember if he died. I think he did. I think he fell. I don't want this guy to come back, but if we're throwing out interesting ideas, sort of who are the characters that have died, who it would be a surprise, and I don't even remember that guy's name because I haven't read the story since it came out, but I like that story, so I do want to reread that story. So that guy, I think he had glasses. I think he had sunglasses and a baseball cap.
Right. I think he went around wearing a freaky painting mask thing. When I was thinking about this, of who you'd like to come back in sort of slightly kind of left field replies, I thought about Voltar with his crazy old pink costume, because he was another one of the cadre that was wiped out in the freighter, and we've not seen since. But he appeared briefly in the books, but never properly fleshed out. So yeah, he's out there, crazy wacko, and maybe do something with him. And after this, I asked this question. We've sort of seen a bit more detail of the upcoming issues from the IDW solicits, and as we know, you can't necessarily always read too much into these because they're often written before the actual story itself has been written, and as we know, Larry Hama makes it up as he goes along, so he's not going to be held accountable to sticking true to what's in a solicit blurb. But in issue 296 solicits, and if you, Tim, I don't, if you want to be spoiled, maybe just put your fingers in your ears for a couple of seconds. But blah, blah, blah. He said maybe the answer is all of the above, because he talks about Dr. Mindbender resurrecting dangerous villains and heroes alike in the hope of creating the deadliest Cobra army ever. It'll be up to the warriors of G.I. Joe to foil their arch enemies' evil machinations before it's too late. Game for the fate of the world is barreling to a calamitous conclusion, and it's time for every single player to go all in. All in, that's a betting term. Ha. New and classic heroes and villains will fill the pages, including some shocking appearances as the fan favourite creative team of living legend Larry Hama and S.L. Gallant begin the final treacherous march to issue 300. You're safe now, Tim.
Do I sing the jingle yet?
I was going to point out as well, we got some solicit dates. We've got next up 293 is currently solicited for June 8th, 294 June 29th, 295 July 13th, and 296 July 27th. Now we know we can't always we can't always trust these dates not to move, but we might be seeing some fortnightly G.I. Joe for a little while. And if anyone can do it, SL Gallant can do it. Tim?
It's hubcomics.com, realamericanbook.com, talkingjoe.co.uk. Thanks to our backers.
Yeah, thanks to our backers, Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, who are getting early access to episodes and exclusive content. If you want to be like them, be the cool kids on Patreon, follow the link from talkingjoe.co.uk, which is our website, links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Leave us a recording message, leave us an email, and do all of those things. Tim, where can people find you?
Hubcomics.com, hubcomics, and realamericanbook.com.
Very good. You can find us next time on Talking Joe, when we will be talking about ARAH 293, High Stakes, Part 3. Hopefully some point in June when the issue comes out. We'll also be catching up to talk about G.I. Joe Disavowed in our look at the Devil's Due era. So I think we can now sing our way off into the distance because we're done. But as always,
nobody beats
yeah, go on.
Sorry, yeah, you had a couple words left.
But remember,
nobody beats Talking Joe, a real an international podcast.
Crikey. We ended up talking a lot longer than I thought. Laters. You've got places to be, things to do, people to see, life to lead.